I actually grabbed all the cues that all of us did and put them in sequence and just watched the whole thing to see how it shook down. And I made the stunning realization that we barely referenced the Gusty Gardens theme at all.
Oh, yeah.
And I made a note to our music editor. It's like, hey, we need to get more Gusty Gardens in here. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking with Max Lombardo, brilliant composer and fellow arranger on the Super Mario Brothers movie and the Super Mario Galaxy movie. So, welcome.
Thanks, Kenny. So happy to be here. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've done much more than just a couple of Mario films. So talk about what are you most proud of?
I mean, I've worked on a number of movies and songs and video games. I've done a horror movie a couple of years back called Wendigo, which I'm very proud of. It's a smaller indie movie, but it was really a lot of room for, music and experimenting. I worked on some of the Star Wars video games, Jedi Survivor and Battlefront, and I recently arranged the strings for a song by Larkin Poe called The Devil's Boat for the series The Grey House that came out on Prime, I think earlier this year.
Oh, amazing. From all those different experiences you have, like, I feel like you have this warm quality to all your music. There's definitely a style there that you can pick up when you hear it. And what would you attribute that to? What are your inspirations?
I think I come from the band world. I used to play drums and guitars in rock and metal bands. So I tend to think of music as maybe in terms of like music first, if that makes sense. Obviously, when we're scoring movies, it's, you're serving the story, so you're not the star, but maybe the unifying factor is that I just think in those terms. Maybe like how would I write this if I sat down with my guitar or a drum set, as opposed to being on the piano only, which I do a lot, obviously, because of our orchestral stuff. But yeah, I think that's probably the main factor.
Your approach to the orchestra is just so natural. It would be easy to confuse you for someone who's just lived in the conservatory and academia for their whole life.
Thank you.
And then it comes as a really cool surprise to me, at least, that you have this band background. You can shred on a guitar at times, or you can play some rockin' drums and stuff too. So that's a really cool multifaceted ability you have.
Thanks so much. I try to keep up. It's hard to, as you know, with our tight schedules, sometimes I don't pick up a guitar or my drumsticks for months or years. Right, unfortunately.
Right. That's me with trumpet playing. So,
there you go.
I came up through college as a trumpet player. And then when I made the commitment to composition, my trumpet playing kind of fell by the wayside. But when I was working on my last feature film, Dora and the Search for Sol Dorado, as a way to, really it was a way to save money, to not have to hire a whole section of trumpet players. I volunteered to do the trumpet playing myself. But
no way.
It meant that I had to pick the horn back up and spend 30 to 60 minutes a day for about 4 to 5 months working my chops back up so that I could do it. And it was great. Like, it kind of reignited my passion for trumpet playing, and it turned out phenomenally well. Even just recording in this tiny little room that we're in, I have the great fortune of knowing this stellar score mixer, Michael Bosca. And he was able to take these, very compact, crudely recorded things and make it sound like I was in there in the room with the rest of the orchestra. And
that's amazing. Yeah. I had no idea, by the way, that I love the score, and I had no idea that was, a trumpet playing in a smaller room. So you did an amazing job.
Well, thank you.
I also think, as musicians, it's important to keep a relationship with our instrument, alive. It is a different channel to sort of funnel creative energy into that is very different from writing, I feel. And so I'm glad you had a chance to reconnect with your instrument.
And to that point, playing on an instrument is another form of expressing and another form of composing, really. You do different things, not just technical wise, but your brain thinks in a different way when you're playing on a different instrument. So there are times when I'm just doing some warm-ups on the horn, and all of a sudden an idea strikes me that would be really idiomatic for the trumpet. and I can use that in a composition later on, so long as I remember it and take it down. Right?
Absolutely.
Well, let's get back to the Mario movies. So you and I both worked on the first and second Mario movies as, arrangers, and we didn't just tackle small little scenes. We were doing some big moments in both movies. So what were the challenges? What were the differences? How did the two experiences compare?
The movies were somewhat similar, but also vastly different. The movie itself, Super Mario Galaxy, from the first one, and the experience overall. I mean, I don't know if the second one was sort of like, the experience was sort of influenced by the fact that we had already had the first one, but anyway, I guess where I'm getting with this is the first one was sort of like new and exciting, and there was so much going on. I remember there being a lot of expectation also, so I mean, it was very exciting, but also kind of nerve-wracking, and I remember one of the main challenges was to have all of these incredibly busy moments where things flying around and all of these quotes and all of these Easter eggs, and to have it sort of like, and you already have that on the screen, right? It's happening in front of you. You don't want the music to just mimic that. You do want to reflect some of that, but you also kind of want to glue it all together. For instance, one of the sequences from the first one, I remember the Donkey Kong fight that I worked on. That was sort of like a really hard thing to balance between trying to do like a Hollywood version of Mickey, like sort of Tom and Jerry level, craziness, and also just staying with the overall art. And then you had moments like the opening, which I actually worked on the opening for both movies, and those are completely different. They're more almost like live action. They're more of like the long haul type, scoring that you do. So anyway, I guess the main challenge for both movies was to sort of strike a balance between trying to be funny and sort of tailor everything to each character and each little movement, but also having the overall storyline always in mind and kind of trying to glue it all together.
In my experience with it, a lot of it depends on what cues you're getting assigned to. So our music editor would give me all the cues that were like going to be really heavily populated with Nintendo themes, because in the arranging team I was like the resident Nintendo nerd.
Oh my god, dude, you know everything.
The very first cue I got in the first Mario movie was the one where Toad is showing Mario around the kingdom, and it's just Easter egg after Easter egg, and it was a ton of fun to work on. Also, another thing we didn't mention yet was we had so much time on the first movie.
Right.
The period we had to score was I think close to 9 months or something. A music of that size and caliber is so nice to have, because we can really stretch out and make the music the best it can possibly be. Things were going well, like the cues were coming out, people were enjoying them. We didn't get a whole lot of feedback on things, because it contained everything they wanted. It had all the Nintendo stuff, it had all the storytelling, the Hollywood movie scoring kind of things in it. And really the pressure wasn't on us much at all, because all the attention was on Chris Pratt and whether he was a good pick to voice Mario. We didn't have to worry too much about people looking too closely at the music. And then the first sneak peek came out, which was that scene I was just talking about, which I guess went over well enough that they wanted to showcase it as a little taste test. And I spent a lot of time on YouTube just looking at reaction videos and seeing how people were going to respond to it, because we still had another couple of months to fine tune some things. And the response was so great, so awesome. And it was a ton of fun to work on, but it wasn't without its challenges, though. So let's talk about parts of either movie where you're working with themes that you gotta stick in there somehow, but in their original form they definitely could not fit whatsoever.
I think one of the main challenges with these themes, as you know, is you have this cue that has its structure and you're sort of going with the scene, and the scene has a pace. It dictates how your music is gonna go. There's different ways to approach the same scene, but there's also boundaries that the scene itself sort of sets for you. And So once those are established and you have your tempo, you have your meter, and you're in a groove, and then you have to drop in these themes that sometimes have nothing to do with the original, with the tempo of your cue, with the meter, with even the key sometimes is challenging because you are in a register where it's like now all of a sudden like, well, how do I, it wouldn't really speak. You have to rely on tricks sometimes, and you do that very well, I know.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's too fast to go to 16th notes, or and 8 notes are too slow, so you go to triplets. Sometimes you're just trying to make a goofy, major thing sound sad. What do? Like, you can't really do a variation of the theme unless, you might want to do that at times, but if it has to be a statement of that melody, then you have to sort of find ways to have the harmony underneath to sort of like convey the sadness, even though the melody itself comes from a whole different world.
Right. Well, we showcased the great job you did with the Gusty Gardens theme used in the final battle of the Mario Galaxy movie, and how you were able to add so much weight and gravitas and all the things to make that heavy scene work with this very light-hearted, floaty kind of melody. So it's more than just tricks, you have to also honor the original source material. So, was there any challenge in doing that for you?
Yes. I know we talked about this briefly. For Gusty Garden specifically, you sometimes have to find something within the theme. Themes sometimes are very long. They have A, B, C sections, and you don't have to stick necessarily to the first 4 measures, So for Gusty Gardens specifically, a lifesaver was to spot which segment of that theme would, work best. And then from there, I had to sort of like zoom out and think, okay, well, this is the shape, this is the overall melody. Let's forget about everything else that's happening around it. What do I do with it? Like I go back. Usually what I do is I literally just play it on a piano. I don't even do the harmony sometimes. I'll maybe write up the basic harmony just so that I know where the original one is in terms of like harmonic language. But then from there I approach it as if it were like a new cue. I have this melody, this is what I need to do, but like everything else I throw at it comes from a whole different place, and it's a place that has to fit the scene, more than anything else. So there you have the percussion and the strings playing the motors and the brass doing the fanfare and all that.
On a similar note, when you're in the process of arranging and writing, are you factoring in all the people that are going to be listening to the cue before it goes out, and as well as the fan base which will be listening after the movie comes out?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, huh? Yeah, I especially with these projects, 2 Mario movies, where there's so many cooks in the kitchen. We have 2 studios, 2 directors, CEOs, and not to mention also our internal back and forth. To be completely honest with you, long story short, no. I try not to go there because, again, there's just so many factors, and there's no telling what... you take the spotting notes, you know what they're looking for, and you try to deliver that, and you try to also put whatever it is that you think is the right contribution to the scene and to the movie, and then you see the reaction and you go from there. I don't want to get too much in my own head where I'm like, oh, and I wonder what this guy was thinking and what that guy was thinking. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not. I feel like also people react differently to different things. Maybe they had one idea about something, they don't get exactly what they had in mind, but maybe they're surprised in a positive way. So I guess that's my approach. I try to be obviously very respectful of what I'm asked, and I try to deliver that the best of my abilities, but I don't try and think too much in the process of doing that.
Well, great answer, because I think exactly along the same lines. We were chosen as arrangers on these movies because of what we can bring, right? And I take that to heart, and to me that is like a green light of, hey, I know the source material really well. I have faith in myself that I'm going to watch a scene and know exactly every game that these things are from and pick the right themes. And what we talked about earlier, if that theme doesn't quite work, we find a way to make it work. Because I do think a little bit about the fan base, and not necessarily like, oh, are they going to like my cue? I'm going to be like, they're going to love this one.
Oh, absolutely. When
I put this in there. And you know, I drop things in there for them, knowing that, oh, when they hear this, they're going to like, you know, they're going to light up. And so in that way, it's a lot of fun. And no, I don't really worry about the executives, because the fact of the matter is we pour our hearts into these things. We do it to the best of our abilities. Like you say, we spend so much time just getting it right, turning it into music that we would appreciate ourselves, and in turn that turns into something that the general public for the most part has come to love. And it's so gratifying when we see reactions to these things and people are loving it, comments on YouTube. When it's all said and done, I'm on these forums. I go to these things and I read the comments. I eat it all up, even the critical ones, because I think, okay, well, if we reset and do this again now, I'm informed with all that information.
I absolutely agree with you. And I didn't mean to say that I don't care about any type of feedback. I just mean I don't do it preemptively.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
As you said, they trusted you with something, you deliver your first take on it, and then you go from there. So now I totally agree with you. And dropping little bits and things, thinking of the fans is also, it's important, because you know, those are the people who keep these projects going, like, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And none of our cues are perfect, of course, and we do get the feedback, and we deliver on that feedback and make sure that everyone is ultimately happy, because, you know, at the end of the day, they have to put a movie out that they're proud of too, and we're a part of that. One of the big feedback things was when we had the first pass of the whole movie, Mario Galaxy movie, I actually grabbed all the cues that all of us did and put them in sequence and just watched the whole thing to see how it shook down. And I made the stunning realization that we barely referenced the Gusty Gardens theme at all. And I made a note to our music editors like, hey, we need to get more Gusty Gardens in here. And it's not because we purposely left it out. It wasn't necessarily the perfect fit for all the scenes going throughout the movie. So that was a wake-up call that, you know, we had to go back and try and fit this theme in a bunch of places. And then the next pass after that had too much Gusty Gardens.
Did it? Really?
It did, yeah. There was a scene early in the film when they're at the birthday party and there's disco music happening. We did a Gusty Gardens disco for that scene. It was fun and cute and all, but it ended up not getting used for the movie because that was an example of when it was getting to be a little too much. But yeah, we made sure that we did get it in some key areas and saved the day. Because, you know, imagine a Galaxy movie without the number one most popular theme from the game.
Nice catch. And, you know, I wasn't fully aware that that's what happened, but like, yeah, well done. I mean, you know this franchise better than anyone, really, I think.
Now, I want to go back to something we touched on earlier, which is maybe a more technical thing in arranging or orchestration in general. Is what's your approach to getting such a good sound out of the orchestra?
I think for me is I try to keep in mind when I'm writing that I'm writing for people, not for a computer. And I mean, that might sound trivial, but it makes a huge difference, because in the end you're going to have people, you know, performing that. And sometimes I try to lean towards something a little simpler, for instance, and let the orchestration play the you know, the little details and make it more intricate in terms of colors, as opposed to having a bajillion lines flying around that are not easy to play. I think if I can think, how would I play this? You know, even I don't play all the instruments, but I can try and keep that in the back of my head, and I think that makes a big difference in the end. And the same goes for choir. You know, in this movie specifically, we use the choir as a sort of like a support to the orchestra. It's never on its own that I know of.
Right, you're right.
So I also keep it simple. You know, you want power and a lot of mass cutting through, and so I just keep it. Honestly, most of my choir writing on these movies is like two voice. in octaves, bass and tenors, and then you have altos and sopranos. And so, yeah, keep it simple, keep it fun and easy for the players. I mean, these are exceptional players that we're working with, so you can throw anything at them. But still, I feel like you get more power and impact out of them if you keep it slightly below the ceiling of what's reasonable.
Going back to when you study orchestration, you learn all the sweet spots of all the instruments, so I try to take that into account. But I mean, you hit it right on the head with, you're writing for people, you're writing for musicians that in some cases and this orchestra we had made up of LA musicians and LA singers. These are people that we can actually, we know their names and faces, we know what they're good at. So that's a big part of how this score really jumped off the page, was just getting it in front of the right people who can work their magic.
Agreed.
Do you have any proud moments or proud scenes or even just tiny little snippets from either movie that...
We kind of touched on a few of the scenes that I worked on, and I think those are definitely, the Donkey Kong fight, the opening sequences, and final battle on Mario Galaxy. There is a guitar bit on the Yoshi bit on the Super Mario Galaxy, the motorbike sequence. So that was fun as well. It was sort of like a take on a more classic rock, more of like a bluesy thing on the Yoshi theme, which talk about trying to adapt emerged worlds, together. We had to make that Yoshi thing into like a bluesy rock and roll thing. So, but that was fun.
That's so cool. Yeah. When I think of these things, you and I both have done some immense cues for these movies, arranging wise and stuff. The things that I'm most proud of are like these tiny little details, little Easter eggs that I dropped in. I'm a huge Dr. Mario fan. So
are you?
There's a bit in the first movie of the chill music from Dr. Mario in one of the heavy action sequences. And not everyone recognized it, so that was kind of cool. Like the real diehard fans were able to pick that up, and I love moments like that. And just having fun, being able to choose from such a vast library of great music and great themes. And one thing that makes Nintendo's music so iconic is that there's a lot of jazz in it.
Oh my god, yeah.
Like, complex chords and chord progressions that you would find in a lot of jazz music. And I feel like for many kids, and myself included, it was playing these Mario games in the 80s and 90s was a gateway into exploring jazz. And I have all this appreciation for those composers, Koji Kondo and all the other greats, for making me appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now let's talk about the future. Is there anything that you're excited or hopeful to see in the Nintendo cinematic universe, or even just the movie industry as a whole, or what are you looking forward to?
I think the Nintendo cinematic universe has virtually endless material that can be transposed onto the big screen, and I think it's a perfect. So many great characters and worlds. I mean, I'm very happy that these two movies were successful, because I think it's going to pave the way for a lot more, and the quality seems to be consistently, really high. So hopefully they'll keep that level of quality and attention to detail. And
do you think that they'll keep the same format, or do you think they might go toward films that are a little less about fan service and more about telling an original story as they go through?
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's sort of actually one of the things that I would like to see in the future, is a little more original subjects in the scripts. And animation used to be very good at that, right? It used to be like the last soldier standing with original material, while everybody else was rebooting stuff all the time. So maybe they'll have an opportunity to sort of like, expand on that and maybe steer away from, the games a little bit, preserve the characters and explore other worlds. And I'm sure we'll see various formats. I mean, this is obviously going to go into TV shows probably at some point.
The Mario Galaxy movie was this year's first $1 billion box office movie. I feel like it's a great sign for theatrical releases. We're kind of riding this wave of new interest in getting people into the theaters. So do you feel that's going to continue, or what do we have to look forward to there?
Well, I'm hopeful. It's always good to see, projects hit such a high target. If I have to be honest, I fear that we're going toward having a few superstars, and then we're going to have a whole sea of, I'm not sure where things are going, you know?
Yeah.
But I remain hopeful, and maybe they'll pave the way for smaller, you know, developers and, studios rather, to go out and release movies in theaters, and hopefully people will be drawn to theaters more as these movies come out, and they'll go to see other smaller movies. So I'm definitely hopeful. I'm a big early 2000s, you know, fan, like, of, in terms of like fantasy and epic of from that period, maybe because it's my time in a way. So I'm hoping we'll go back to that a little bit, like sort of like Lord of the Rings, very melodic, fantasy, hopeful, heroic stuff.
I'm right with you there. This year gave me a lot more to be hopeful about with movies like Obsession.
You're right.
That, you know, was made for peanuts basically and had a great run in theaters. So I'm hoping it paves the way for more, you know, indie movies and smaller things. In the 90s and early 2000s, yes, we had all those great fantasy films and Jason Bourne movies and things like that, but there was also a really healthy selection of indie movies and smaller things that played for, you know, smaller screens and stuff. And we kind of lost that, especially when COVID rolled around. That almost got eliminated, and it took movies like the first Mario movie and Barbie and Oppenheimer to get people back to the theaters. And the good news is I feel the theaters have been able to sustain their audiences with, you know, releases of these big movies. But what I'm real hopeful to see is more things like, again, Obsession, where you can fill the seats with something that was made for a lot less.
Yeah. It's easy as a small studio, even as a small movie, to instantly transition into the Olympus of like production if you play your cards right. But then the bad news is that you're immediately leaving the league, that sort of like the independent layer that needs to exist in order for things like that to keep coming out. I don't know if that makes sense. It's sort of like, as soon as you become very successful, do you stay true to your origin and you keep also producing smaller budget movies and investing in new actors that are not humongous, or do you turn to like bigger?
I've always felt we have companies like Fox Searchlight and these divisions of the large studios that are dedicated towards the indie filmmaking.
That's true, yeah.
And those haven't vanished. I think they are doing a lot less nowadays, but movies like Obsession would be sort of a kick in the rear to those companies, saying, hey, this can still work if you invest in it. And I think part of the success was obviously having a good cast to execute on a movie like that, but also good writing. And that's something that I think we have plenty of right now, because we went through a period where almost nothing was getting made, but lots was getting written and developed. So we should have, you know, lots of good stories just, you know, on deck, waiting to be made. So it's just a matter of, you know, picking and choosing what do they think is worth making.
Right, you know? Without always trying to play it safe, knowing what, you know, is going to pay best. But because you can have big surprises like Obsession. You know, I'm with you on that, and hopefully we'll keep also work in town. We're in Los Angeles, and this city has such a great tradition and history of making movies, and especially post-production. You know, it's becoming challenging to keep it here, and I'm hopeful that we'll manage to.
I think so. That. And, you know, there's good news on that front. There's efforts being made with this congressional bill, I think. And we're going to see what happens with that. It could make a big difference. And so we're kind of waiting on edge.
Just send those letters to your representatives, you know.
Hey, this was fun. I had a great time. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Kenny.
Max Lombardo, ladies and gentlemen. Subscribe to this channel if you want to see more. And we hope you enjoyed the interview.
Thanks so much. And thanks for having me, Kenny. This is great.
My pleasure, man. All right. Take it easy, everybody. See you on the next one.